Hello, everybody. This is James McDaniels, and you are listening to the NBA and NASCAR Power Half Hour. I am your host, and we have got another great show on tap for all you guys today. Sorry if my voice sounds a little, I don't know what you'd say, kind of gasping for air a little bit. Just got back from Czech, and I'm a little bit tired out. Um, but I knew I had to get the show in this week, so I'm doing it now. And we've got way too much to talk about, it seems, today. I mean, a usual show will usually last about 35 minutes or so, but this one might go longer, shorter. Really know how long it's going to go, but I just know we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. I'm just going to tell you that straight off the bat. I mean, there was a huge sports weekend. I mean, we had the NBA, of course, we got the playoffs, the Lakers, Utah coming down the wire for that 8th seed. Houston and Golden State have clinched, so we're going to talk about that. The Lakers have a huge loss. I'll tell you about that. NASCAR, huge weekend at Texas, big race. Kyle Busch did really well. Truex has a streak now that's going pretty long, so we'll talk about that. We also had something that happened during the Texas race, so we'll get to that as well. And then, of course, we'll talk about the Masters tournament. Of course, the Masters is one of those traditions that is unlike any other, and I think that's a perfect way to talk about the Masters because it is just one of the best golf tournaments at the beautiful Augusta course in Augusta, Georgia. So we'll talk about, once again, another great finish at Augusta, and we'll talk about some history there. So we've got history all across the boards here in this week's show, and we've just got tons of stuff to talk about. But before I get to all of it, I want to first go on probably the most serious note out of all of this. Today in Boston, of course, Boston, the home of some of the great teams. We have, New England Patriots. They're good in football. We have in basketball. We have the Boston Celtics, and then of course you have the Boston Red Sox in baseball. But even though Boston's such a great city with both its sports and its hospitals as well, very sad thing today that happened during the Boston Marathon. Of course, Boston Marathon, probably the most famous race other than the races that you see in the Olympics. Of course, the marathon, 26.2-mile run, and it's a great tradition. But today, really sad. Bombs went off in Boston near the finish line just after the first few racers came across the line and finished that great feat, and unfortunately resulted in the loss of 3 lives at this point. It happened at about 3 o'clock Pacific time, so that's just after noon Eastern time, to put it in perspective. And out of those 3 killed, we know at least one of them is an 8-year-old boy that was killed, and also over 100 people have been injured. And of course, a lot of people are coming out and speaking what they saw. I mean, people are saying things like, there was a bunch of smoke. All of a sudden, there was a massive boom. I mean, you've just got a bunch of people that are just describing this thing, and you've got videos to back it up. I mean, it's really sad. It's really scary that, these bombs had to go off at such a great event like the Boston Marathon. So we'll keep them in our prayers, and we love to see sports, but we don't like to see anything like this happen to them. And even though Boston has some of the best hospitals, even they were just overbooked today. I mean, it's been all over the news all day. So pray for the runners, pray for the fans, and hopefully next year's Boston Marathon won't have anything like this. But at this point, this year's Boston Marathon, 3 have been killed in the bombings during the event, and over 100 people have been injured. So yeah, that's the update on the Boston Marathon bombings, as you may so call it. We'll have more info probably next week. Of course, if we get any more info, if there's any more lives lost and anything that's related, to the story that's very big, we'll talk about next week. But for now, that is the update on the sad tragedy that happened during the Boston Marathon today. So we'll keep everybody in our prayers and hope everybody can move on from that. So let's, with that taken care of and announced, let's go on to the main purpose of our show, which is to, basically talk about the NBA and NASCAR. So I'm going to talk about the NBA first. And right now, if you look at the standings, of course, we talked a lot about last week about how Houston and Golden State were just about to clinch their spots. Well, they've done just that. Both Houston and Golden State have clinched their spots in the Western playoffs. Of course, as we all know from at least probably the last week or 2 weeks or so, we know that the Eastern Conference has already been settled out. I mean, that was no big surprise. So, of course, the 8 teams in the East, all there's really is now to watch in the East is just simply to see who's going to get what spot, because all of them have been decided at this point, so nobody else can move into the playoff picture. All 8 teams in the top of the Eastern Conference right now are already locked in. But of course, alas, the great race, is in the Western Conference this year. Like I said, Houston and Golden State have already clinched, and then of course you got the top 5 that clinched a long time ago, including Memphis, the Clippers, Denver, the Spurs, and of course the Oklahoma City Thunder. But of course we've got the last seed, the 8th seed. It's either going to go to the Lakers or Utah. Last time Dallas was still eligible to possibly come back and possibly get the 8th seed, but that is not going to happen. They've officially mathematically been eliminated from playoff contention. So now it's just a 2-man race to see who's going to take that final seed in the playoffs in the West. Is it going to be the Lakers or Utah? At this point, it appears that it will probably be the Lakers. I mean, they did beat the Spurs just yesterday, so they're doing pretty good. However, I don't know if they have a tiebreaker yet, because both teams have played 71 games. And if the Lakers owned a tiebreaker over Utah, considering that the Lakers are 1 game ahead of Utah at this point with only 1 game left to go for both teams, then obviously the Lakers would have clinched if they owned the tiebreaker. So I don't know if the Lakers do own the tiebreaker or not. I don't know what team owns the tiebreaker, but I'm assuming it's Utah, because if it was the Lakers, then at this point, based on how everything has gone this far and at what there's left to go before the playoffs start later this week, it appears to be that it's Utah. But don't take my word for it. But at this point in time, the Lakers lead by 1 game. Both teams have 1 game left to go. So if you're a Lakers fan, I'm feeling pretty good for you. And if you're a Utah fan, you just hope that Utah wins, Lakers lose, and then we'll see what happens from there. But that's the update on the standings. And, by the way, I know we already know what 8 teams are going to be East, but here's where they currently stand in terms of, where their ranking's going to be, because they're still kind of close with a few games left to go, a few positions that could be key. You have Miami, of course, that's still leading. They clinched the East a long time ago. Then you have New York, Indiana, Brooklyn, Atlanta, Chicago, Boston, and then finally Milwaukee. And then, of course, we've already talked about the Western Conference. I will be talking a little bit later about the Sacramento Kings thing that's going on between Sacramento and Seattle. Of course, the playoffs do begin a little bit later this week, but also probably by the end of this week, we possibly and hopefully will know the future of the Sacramento Kings. And I'll explain a little bit more on that a little bit later in the NBA part of this broadcast. So that's where the NBA standings stand right now. Now, like I said, the Lakers have a pretty good chance of getting that 8th seed based on how everything is right now. But they did lose one of their best players, and you can probably guess who it is, even if you don't know this information yet. Kobe Bryant is the one that we're talking about that the Lakers have lost. Kobe Bryant has actually tore his Achilles, and he's now going to be sidelined for months. So, obviously, that means he will not be playing the rest of the year. That obviously means he will not be playing in any of the playoffs, no matter how far the Lakers go. But you also got to remember that the Lakers did beat the Spurs, and the Spurs are, one of the best teams in the West. So, if the Lakers were able to beat the Spurs, and that was without Kobe Bryant, in fact, Kobe Bryant kind of does a coaching role, if you can say, because anyway, Kobe is kind of a coach when he's out on the sidelines, if you can get that. When he's not out there, he's more like a coach for his team, and it seems to be working, because Kobe Bryant, of course, is one of those Lakers greats, so he kind of knows what to do. I mean, he has some of the best averages. He's one of the top scorers in the NBA in the history of it. So I don't think he's pretty bad for a coach. Now, of course, he's probably not the best like point guard coach because he, until probably this year, really didn't pass the ball a lot, but he's improving on that as well. But anyway, the Lakers were able to win against the Spurs without Kobe Bryant playing a single second on the floor. So I think that's a pretty good sign that the Lakers could, they could be a force to mess with. They may be number 8, but they could be a force to mess with. The only problem is they're not going to be able to have Bryant on the floor to help him out. And like I said, he has torn his Achilles, and now Kobe Bryant will be out for the rest of the season. And it looks like he may come back at the beginning of next season. That's what he's hoping to do. And I'll tell you one thing about Kobe Bryant right now. I mean, I personally am not a big fan of him because, I don't know, it just always seems like he has an attitude and stuff like that. And he's kind of selfish with the ball for the majority of his career. There's only been, a few times when I really have seen Kobe Bryant, really pass the ball. But I will tell you this about Kobe Bryant. And this thing this thing is pretty much true about Kobe. He does not quit. Kobe does not quit at all. He does not stop. He doesn't let anything, stop him from getting somewhere or doing something. I mean, with the game he tore his actual Achilles. The game he actually tore his Achilles, which was against the Golden State Warriors. He continued to play and put up some great numbers at the end of the day. And you know what? He did that with a torn Achilles heel. All right, when you tear your Achilles, it's not very fun to play because your foot's pretty much hurting you. But Kobe Bryant fought through it and still put on a pretty good game before finally going out. And guess what? The Lakers actually beat the Warriors, which was the team that they were playing when Kobe broke his Achilles, and they actually won 118 to 116. So that pretty much just tells you how much passion Kobe Bryant has for the game, and I can say so many things about him that I don't like, but if there's one thing that I have to admire, it's that his perseverance is really, really good. And he even had a photo of him in his hospital room, smiling and stuff, even with the torn Achilles that he had. So I'm not gonna praise him pretty much any more than that, but you gotta give it to him. You gotta give it to Kobe that even if you don't like him for pretty much anything else he does, you gotta admit he's one heck of a scorer. He can play the game of basketball in terms of a self game, and he definitely has perseverance, and that's what I really like. That's the thing I like about Kobe Bryant. If there's something good I have to say about him, it's that. So I think due to that, I think he will definitely come back. I think he'll come back in terms of he'll be good. He'll still be good after he comes back from this injury. So I don't think this injury will hold him back, except for being able to play for a little bit. So that's my take on Kobe Bryant and the Kobe Bryant situation. Now let's go on to one of the other famous basketball players in the NBA, of course, LeBron James, Miami. Of course, we all remember that when not Kobe Bryant. LeBron James, he left Cleveland, go to Miami, and you would think that Miami is, good all the time in terms of sunshine stuff. I mean, they can have hurricanes and stuff that happen there, but excuse me, for the most part, Florida is very, very sunny in terms of a state, and it actually came as a surprise to King James, or that's what his Instagram is. But it came as a surprise to LeBron James when there was just a huge amount of flooding in the Miami area. I mean, sunny Miami, that the only bad stuff that they get pretty much is hurricanes. I mean, it really, I don't know if it kind of shocked him or something to see how much flooding there was in Miami. But anyway, it kind of shocked him so much that he was driving through flooding in Miami that he actually took Instagram photos. All right? I mean, and when I say actually, I mean you would expect that he would do that because that's kind of insane when you're driving through water that's pretty much the same size as your car in a way and bigger. So he shot these Instagram photos up and basically showed it to all of his followers. So you may be like, okay, so what's the big deal on this? Well, it turns out, that LeBron James, the pictures that he took turned out to help the National Weather Service actually issue an alert. The National Weather Service did not issue an alert until they got the photos from LeBron James showing the flooding in Florida. Only then did the National Weather Service actually put out a warning and alert for that area, in Miami, saying that there's a bunch of flood warnings going on. I mean, this is what the alert actually said, all right? So it says preliminary local storm report. The National Weather Service, Miami, Florida, 8:20 p.m. Eastern Time, Saturday, April 13th, 2013. Time, event, city location, lat, lawn, date, mag, county, location, state, source, blah, 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 all that information. Then it's like 2:15 p.m. flood, Coral Gables, 25.73 N, or should I say north, 80.27 west. April 13, 2013, Miami-Dade, Florida public. So that's, I guess, kind of what weather report from the National Weather Service basically looks like when it's an alert. But then it added this extra part, and this is where LeBron James come in. It says, LeBron James, number 6 of the Miami Heat, reported significant street flooding in the Coral Gables area. Reported, relayed through social media. Or, in this case, it was through the pictures that LeBron James put over Instagram that got a lot of hits. I mean, it's not the first time a pro's done this to, help, I guess, get the word out about something in terms of weather. But I'm telling you, for LeBron James to take those pictures and then it turns out to become a weather alert, not only does that amaze me that the flooding can be that bad, but it amazes me even more so that it took LeBron James's pictures to finally get a National Weather Service alert out. I mean, come on, look at if you go look at the photos that they have on here, it's absolutely insane that the National Weather Service didn't call something sooner. And then they finally call something just because LeBron James takes photos of it. It just does not make sense. The Weather Service should have been better than that. I mean, honestly, if that much flooding's going on and seriously hasn't been reported like big time, then the Weather Service has got a problem. Now, I like the Weather Service in our area because they do pretty good, but that's definitely a win for LeBron James there, getting recognized for showing photos of, insane flooding that should have easily been alerted a lot sooner by the National Weather Service. So that was probably your interesting story of the NBA day. So with the NBA all done, all complete at this point in my broadcast, let's get over to some NASCAR. And there was two weird things that happened at this week's race. And so this race was a night race, Saturday night race, and we're going to Texas Motor Speedway. And Kyle Busch, he already had a pretty good start for the weekend. He had already won the Nationwide Series, so he came in pretty pumped up about hoping to get yet another sweep, which is kind of how Kyle does things. Kyle is very good at making sweeps between the Nationwide and the Sprint Cup Series. It's happened a few times, and what do you know? Busch did it again today, or not today, but he did it again Saturday night when he won at Texas in the Sprint Cup event. Now, this was actually the first win for Kyle Busch in the Sprint Cup Series at Texas. He's never won at Texas before in a Sprint Cup Series race until Saturday. Now, of course, this race was the NRA 500. Now, I'll talk about the scrutiny and blah, blah, about that in just a few minutes here. But let's talk about the race first. So, it was a very good race in terms for Truex Jr. and like we said, Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch won. Martin Truex Jr. finished runner-up. Now, usually a runner-up, is pretty dang good. Of course, the only thing that you're upset about is you didn't win. But Martin Truex, he's pretty upset that he didn't win because, he had a very, very fast car the entire race, and it's been forever since he won his last Sprint Cup race. I think it was like back in 2007. I know he did it at Dover. Or actually, I have the exact date here. June 4th, 2007. That was the Dover race. Way back then, right when he used to drive the number 1 car. I still remember that win he had, and that's the only win he has ever had in the Sprint Cup Series. And so there's been so many times he's been so close. Martin Truex Jr. has to win a race, and he's just never done it. And this was another example. He was one of the best cars at Texas, just couldn't get it done. So he wasn't too happy about that. But you know what? It's racing. So eventually the bad luck will have to end sometime for Martin Truex in terms of getting a win. And I also got to say, it's also got to be a matter of time before Jeff Gordon's luck finally turns out to be good instead of bad. I mean, Jeff Gordon, in this race, I mean, I was following this race on PRN. I actually had to go to a concert that night. So I actually was listening to some of the race on PRN. Of course, I probably watched about 200 of the laps before I left to go to the event, and then I listened to PRN during about between 50 and 30 laps to go, and the rest of it I didn't catch. But probably during that time, Jeff Gordon had also a very, very strong car all night, and Jeff Gordon doesn't do that well at Texas. He has won there before, but it was one of his last tracks to win at that currently run at the circuit. The final track that is on the circuit that he hasn't won at, with the exception of the newly added Kentucky Speedway, was actually Homestead Miami Speedway, and he won that race at the end of last year. So Jeff Gordon, let me explain to you what happened. So Jeff Gordon, he's coming around, he's doing really well, he's in 3rd place. And all of a sudden, I'm not sure what gave way. It says here on the description that his front suspension gave way, but it sounded to me, based on what I was hearing from PRN at the time, that it almost seemed like an engine failure of some kind, because there was smoke coming out of the back of his car, according to what the PRN guys were reporting. But anywho, Jeff Gordon ran really, really well all day, but it kind of outdid it with his car and eventually cost him. And he finished the race in 38th place after basically getting a DNF at that point. He only completed, I think it was 306 laps. Let me look that up for a quick second here. Yeah, it was 306. He ran for 306 laps before that engine blew up. But let's go to the end of the race, because this is kind of where Truex lost it. Because Truex, like I said, he did really, really good, but it kind of worked out in Kyle's favor near the end of the race. And this is how it happened, all right? So we're talking about probably just a few laps to go, in terms of maybe 50-something laps to go. Because there's 334 laps in the race, but I actually have something up here now. All right, this was lap 280 was the one that I was looking for, which is around 50 laps left to go. That's actually 64, or no, 54. So yeah, I was pretty much right. David Gilliland. All right, this brought out a caution on lap 280 with 54 laps to go. David Gilliland turned Marcus Ambrose, all right, on the backstretch, and then that caused the 6th caution of the night. And then as the yellow flew, Jeff Byrne ran into the back of Mark Martin's car and then spun into the inside wall. So that's what brought out the 6th caution. And Truex and Busch were on pit road at this time because they were just cycling through regular green flag pit stops. But luckily, they were in their pit stalls basically getting stuff done to them when the caution came out. And by NASCAR rules, they stayed on the lead lap and continued to lead the race. But it didn't last long, though, because they restarted on lap 291. But Truex actually got a lead. Okay, he got a lead on the restart of 291. But he basically was called back at lap 314, which was only a few laps later, because there was some debris, and that pretty much brought out like one of the last cautions of the race. So debris in turn 4 on lap 314 caused everybody to, get lined up again, and then that's where Truex lost it, because he lost the race to Busch off that final pit road stop on lap 314, that caution. Of course, Busch had a really good pit stall. I think it was like the first pit stall, because he qualified first at Texas this weekend. So technically, Busch had the upper hand on those final pit stops, and that basically what gave him the win is he was able to pull away from Truex, and Truex didn't have enough time to catch back up to Kyle Busch once he got a rhythm going. So that was pretty much your race for Texas. Kyle Busch completes the weekend sweep, wins. Martin Truex the awful and depressing non-win streak continues for him, even though he gets really close every time. Jeff Gordon, his engine went down, front suspension actually, according to this. But point is, he didn't finish the race. Your top 10 was Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Carl Edwards, Greg Biffle, Joey Logano, Jimmy Johnson, Eric Almirola, Brian Vickers, Brad Keselowski, and finally Ryan Newman. And that's also a funny thing with Joey Logano and Jimmy Johnson, because both drivers actually, or no, not Jimmy Johnson's car per se, but definitely Logano's car. Logano's car almost was late for the race and probably would have, and was pretty much penalized for it. I mean, it was Joey Logano's car. He made the race, but he was late in terms of out being on the grid. He was considered late out on the grid because of inspection, blah blah blah, and so because of that, Logano had to start at the rear of the field. So pretty good day for Logano coming back from that setback at the beginning of the race and finish 5th. So that is your race at Texas. But it wasn't and while Kyle Busch was pretty happy, though, it wasn't a very good day. It wasn't a very good week in terms of NASCAR, in terms of the scrutiny that they came under and the sadness that came during the Texas race. And here's what I mean by that. All right, like I said earlier, the race was sponsored by the NRA. It was the NRA 500. Now, of course, we all know the NRA has come under a lot of scrutiny after all the gun stuff that they have, in terms of, having everybody have guns and no like restrictions on guns and blah blah blah, while the government is trying to have gun control, actually, set up gun control things so bad things like Newtown and other horrific tragedies that occur because we're not strong enough on our defensive guns, because they occur, they're trying to stop that with gun control. So the NRA came under a lot of scrutiny for sponsoring the race because of all the criticism they've been receiving and the gun control and stuff and all that. But honestly, I don't think it should be criticized, because the sponsorship was figured out way before Newtown. The sponsorship for the Texas race by the NRA was figured out before the Newtown thing happened, and therefore I don't think it should be criticized. I mean, sponsorships like these for these events are set way in advance, so I don't really think people should really, get onto it. They shouldn't get mad at NASCAR for allowing the NRA to sponsor, because the NRA sponsored and they worked out this deal before the Newtown thing happened. But it was also pretty sad because there was a death during the race, actually, in the infield. It was ruled a suicide due to a gunshot to the head, and it occurred after apparently somebody got into an argument with other campers, and it happened in or around a pickup truck also, according to this article I'm reading. The one thing, though, that I find very interesting about this article is that I don't see, at least at this point, anywhere in there where it says how the heck they even got a gun into the raceway, because firearms are prohibited by Texas law from going into the racetrack. So I don't really know how the heck they got the gun in there, especially if it was prohibited. So they didn't explain that, but bottom line, NRA, I understand it was scrutinized and gun control and all this, but I don't think it should be, because technically they did do the sponsorship before Newtown and all the other gun control stuff really came into, big question. And then, again, sad day in the NASCAR race is the death of a man in the infield. Apparent suicide to a gunshot wound to the head after getting into an argument in the infield. And then Kyle Busch wins. Martin Truex, the streak continues. Jeff Gordon, terrible loss during the race. He finished really bad. Joey Logano came back, finished 5th after being late to the starting grid. So that's pretty much your summary of Texas. And let me see how I'm doing on my time here. Oh, I'm actually about half an hour, so that's good. I want to talk about the Masters a little bit here before I go off. I mean, the Masters is one of those tournaments that's absolutely amazing. Like I said before, the Masters, and I agree with this catchphrase every single time I hear it. The Masters, a tradition unlike any other, and it really is a tradition unlike any other. I mean, who can seriously forget about all the great playoffs, all the great shots that have occurred at Augusta? I mean, those putts on 18 to win, the greatness, the comebacks that have been made, the playoffs that have occurred, the great shots that have happened during a few holes prior to 18. Who can forget the double eagle that happened many years ago in the Masters, and that was probably the first big uh, Masters like big highlight. Who can forget Phil Mickelson 2010, of course, hitting it out of the pine straw on that par 5 and landing it 5 feet from the hole on the second shot from the pine straw and covered by trees and a tree stump. And then you got Bubba Watson last year, the shot, and they consider this a shot that was heard all over the world. Bubba's shot also came out of the pine straw on this playoff hole, and he had to hook it and do pretty much everything to get it close to the green, and he nailed it. He seriously nailed the thing. I mean, the Masters is such a great tournament. It's such a beautiful course. And I'm telling you, it cannot get any better than that. And winning the green jacket, and even the theme song to Augusta is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I just get this warm, heartwarming feeling when I hear that every single time. It is absolutely incredible, and that is why I love watching the Masters every year. So let's talk about this year. Before this event, no Australian had ever won the Masters. They had won pretty much every other U.S. Open in pretty good numbers, but no Australian had ever won the Masters. Well, that changed Sunday when Adam Scott, an Australian, he won the Masters on the second playoff hole in the Masters tournament. And so basically, let me break this down for you. There were two big things that happened basically during this week. There were a lot of joy. There was a lot of scrutiny at this week's Masters tournament, or should I say this year's Masters tournament. So Adam Scott was kind of just hanging around all the time, and then he just made kind of a sudden move in the final 18 and finally got up there. He was competing with Angel Cabrera. Angel Cabrera has won the Masters before. He knows, what it feels like to win a green jacket. So he was also doing all right. But like they say, the Masters, you can pretty much, not expect anything because, you can't expect what you expect. I mean, there's going to be huge changes. So, I mean, if you seriously just think about it, you cannot expect anything at the Masters. It's all going to come down to this final few holes, and that's where history will happen. So Cabrera and Scott, they tied after 72 holes. Both of them hit some pretty good shots in the last round. They had to do two playoff holes, and then finally Adam Scott won the Masters with a birdie putt on the 74th hole and became the first Australian in the history of Masters to win the green jacket. It was the most beautiful thing ever, and the crowd went crazy. And even with the cloud cover and everything that was happening, even with the umbrellas, everybody was still out there cheering him on. They were just loving it. And you know what? It was a great tournament as well. I mean, there was some nice history that was also made in the amateur group. This guy named Tiang Lang Guan, something like that, or I'll just say his last name, Guan. This Guan guy, he's 14 years old. This guy's from China, and he finishes the entire tournament 12 over par. Now, granted, that's not really good by pro standards, but you know what? For a 14-year-old playing in his first Masters, that is really stinking good when you're playing Augusta. That is a really good score, especially when the other guys only, are at like -10 after 4 rounds. So very proud of the Guan. He did very, very well, and he really impressed me. Once he gets that golf game a little bit better, he'll really start doing well in the PGA if he so desires to do that. But yeah, plus 12, very good for a 14-year-old at the Masters, and glad he won the amateur award for being the lowest scoring amateur at the Masters this year. And, it's great to see stories like that. I mean, Guan, not only did he, do that well in the Masters, he also broke two things of history. He broke history of being the youngest player ever to actually qualify for the Masters, and he became the youngest player to also make the cut for the Masters. In terms of making the cut, to advance to the third and fourth round. So Guan already made history, so that's great, and hopefully to see him in the future in golf, and we'll see what he does from here. But very good performance from that young man, and I can't wait to see him in the future. So I'm going a little long here, like I thought I was going to go, but I'm probably talking a lot as well. So I'm going to try to keep this next one kind of as short as possible. The last thing I want to talk about is Tiger Woods' Masters appearance. Now, Tiger Woods, he finished all right, I guess you could say. He finished pretty good, but but the big thing of this week definitely had to be during the second round on Friday's round. All right, he was at the 15th fairway, and Tiger Woods, like I said, this is the second round. Tiger Woods, he hits a shot that basically hits the hole pretty much perfect. I mean, he hits it spot on. He couldn't have gotten any better. It hits the flagstick and then rolls all the way back and then wham, right into the water. So, of course, when you hit the water shot, that means you got to take a drop ball, pretty much approximately right where you last hit your next shot and then hit again, and you have a assessed a one-stroke penalty. But when Tiger Woods did this, he intentionally dropped it like a yard or two back or something like that. He intentionally dropped it like a few yards away from where he last did it. Now, whether it was farther or shorter, I don't want to exactly say, but the point is he didn't put the ball exactly where it approximately would be located and what people would like. Now, later on, there would be later photos that show that it kind of is where Tiger Woods, hits the ball. It looks like it's almost pretty much in the exact same spot based on divots that you see around the course. But when Tiger Woods admitted what he had done, because technically that's against golf rules to put the ball, even if it's farther back, you cannot do that. You have to place it approximately where you hit your last shot. So when Augusta officials heard that, they went in, assessed it, and gave Tiger Woods a 2-stroke penalty. A lot of people thought Tiger should have exited the tournament at that point, just out of sheer goodness to the game, because that's the rules, is to usually get ejected if you signed the wrong scorecard, which he did, because he signed the scorecard that did not include that 2-stroke penalty and whatnot. But he stayed in the tournament. He finished all right. But definitely the biggest controversy of the week was Tiger Woods staying in the tournament after hitting that shot. But I don't think it will really affect him. It'll probably be remembered, but I don't think it will really affect him in his career, because technically he wasn't that much off anyway. The photos that I'm looking at here with the divots that are being circled up and stuff, he really didn't do it that much. It was probably a yard, but you know what? It's the PGA. They've got rules, and you need to follow them. And if he intentionally broke the rules, then you must get penalized for it. And I think the penalty was a good penalty, and we'll see how he works on from there. So we basically talked about everything, and the last thing, there is one more thing I want to talk about, but I'll just be very, very brief on it. Louisville, Michigan, they competed in the national basketball, the national collegiate, and the NCAA men's basketball final, and Louisville came up on top. It was a huge win for Louisville, and it was great for Kevin Ware, because Kevin Ware came back, had that very gross leg injury, and it's really good to see him cut the net down and just have his team there, and the team had passion, and it's great to see. But at the same time, I gotta have a feel for that Trey Burke guy on the Michigan side. Trey Burke, I'm telling you, is going to be one heck of a basketball player someday. He's got all the goods. I can't wait to see it with him getting in the NBA, and I cannot wait to see Kevin Ware come back and play well, and then hopefully get drafted into the NBA and do well in his career. But for now, he can celebrate with Louisville no matter how damaged his leg is, and Louisville is now national champions. And yep, that's pretty much it. And now our bracketology is finally all complete. No more totally destructions in our bracketology. So with everything pretty much that I said I was going to cover covered, that's going to do it for this edition of the NBA and NASCAR Power Half Hour. So I will see you guys next week, where of course we will have any updates on the Boston race that happened. I also will have more information on the Kings, because obviously I think we'll possibly have a decision by then. I'll quickly go over that too. Very, very briefly, the NBA has decided that they will meet Wednesday of this week, in addition to the previously scheduled Thursday and Friday Board of Governors meetings, to discuss specifically about the Kings' sell to Seattle and the Kings and the Sacramento bid and all that hoopla. That's basically the only new update that we've got, but this is going to be a huge week for Kings fans. It's going to be a huge week for Seattle fans, and we'll see what comes out of it. Of course, I want the Kings to stay, but it's up to the NBA, and right now it's pretty much all up for grabs. So we'll see what happens, and I'll have an update on that. And like I said, I'll have an update on Boston. We'll have an update on the playoffs. We'll have our next NASCAR race occurring, and any other odd news that I can find, like LeBron James's news that I found this week. I'll talk about that. So with that, guys, that will do it for my show today. So until next time, I hope you guys have a great rest of the week.